Welcome to Project Darkknight. This video is the start of a series on the creepy, paranormal and unsolved mysteries. I won't be using a script for these, so I'm basically freestyling. So today, we're going to be talking about a human experiment that went very, very wrong. It was set a long time ago, so they didn't have iPhones and digital cameras like we got today. So they had to rely on just microphones basically and just by their eyeballs. That was partly why this experiment ended so badly. That and also the scientists who led the experiment, I don't think they gave a shit about these test subjects. These test subjects, these men, they were prisoners, and in exchange for taking part in this experiment, they were promised their freedom. But as some of you already know, and as the rest of you will find out, this experiment ended their lives really, really badly. Have you guessed what I'm talking about? That's right, today I'm going to be talking about the Russian sleep experiment. If you're into the horror and the paranormal, I make videos on that, as well as gaming walkthroughs, so feel free to check them out. But this is going to be a new series on the creepy, weird and unsolved mysteries side of it. So if you like that, just find the like button and disembowel it. Then subscribe to my channel and turn on all post notifications. Okay, let's get started. Russian researchers in the late 1940s kept 5 people awake for 15 days using an experimental gas-based stimulant. They were kept in a sealed environment to carefully monitor their oxygen intake so the gas didn't kill them, since it was very toxic in high concentrations. This was before closed-circuit cameras, so they only had microphones and a 5-inch thick glass porthole to monitor them. The chamber was stocked with books, beds to sleep, but no bedding, and running water and a toilet, and they had enough dried food to last over a month. The test subjects were political prisoners deemed enemies of the state during World War II. Everything was fine for the first 5 days. The subjects hardly complained, having been promised falsely that they would be freed if they submitted to the test, and they were not allowed to sleep for 30 days. Their conversations and activities were monitored, and it was noted that after 5 days they started to talk about increasingly traumatic incidences in their past, and the general tone of the conversations took on a darker aspect after the 5th day. After 5 days, they started to complain about the circumstances and events that led them to where they were, and started to demonstrate severe paranoia. They stopped talking to each other and began alternatively whispering to the microphones and the one-way mirrored porthole. Oddly, they all seemed to think that they could win the trust of the researchers by turning over their comrades, the other subjects in captivity with them. At first, the researchers suspected that this was just an effect of the gas itself. So, after 5 days, they started whispering into the microphones and the portholes, and they started to try and give information about their comrades, and they thought that by doing this they could get out. After 9 days, the first of them started screaming. He ran the length of the chamber, repeatedly yelling at the top of his lungs for 3 hours straight. He continued attempting to scream, but was only able to produce occasional squeaks. The researchers realized that he had physically torn his vocal cords. The most surprising thing about this behavior is how the others reacted to it, or rather how they didn't react to it. They just continued whispering to the microphones until the second captive started to scream. The other non-screaming captives took their books apart. They started ripping pages out and smeared page after page with their own feces and pasted them calmly over the glass portholes, and the screaming promptly stopped. So did the whispering to the microphones. After 3 more days passed, the researchers checked the microphones hourly to make sure they were working, since they thought it was impossible that no sound could be coming with 5 people inside. The oxygen consumption in the chamber indicated that all 5 must still be alive. In fact, it was the amount of oxygen 5 people would consume at a very heavy level of strenuous exercise. On the morning of the 14th day, the researchers did something they said they would never do to get a reaction from the captives. They used the intercom inside the chamber, hoping to provoke a response from the captives that they were afraid were either dead or vegetables. They announced, "We are opening the chamber to test the microphones. Step away from the door and lie flat on the floor or you will be shot. Compliance will earn one of you your immediate freedom." To their surprise, they heard a single phrase in a calm voice respond, "We no longer want to be freed." Debate broke out amongst the researchers and the military forces funding the research. Unable to provoke any more responses using the intercom, it was finally decided to open the chamber at midnight on the 15th day. The chamber was flushed of the stimulant gas and filled with fresh air, and immediately voices from the microphones began to object. 3 different voices began begging, as if pleading for their life, to turn the gas back on. The chamber was opened and soldiers sent in to retrieve the test subjects. They began to scream louder than ever, and so did the soldiers when they saw what was inside. 4 of the 5 subjects were still alive, although no one could rightly call the state of them alive. The food rations past day 5 had not been so much as touched. There were chunks of meat from the dead test subjects, thighs and chest stuffed into the drain in the center of the chamber, blocking the drain and allowing 4 inches of water to accumulate on the floor. Precisely how much of the water on the floor was actually blood was never determined. All 4 surviving test subjects also had large portions of muscle and skin torn away from their bodies. The destruction of flesh and exposed bone on their fingertips indicated that the wounds were inflicted by hand, not with teeth, as the researchers initially thought. Closer examination of the position and angles of the wounds indicated that most, if not all, was self-inflicted. The abdominal organs below the ribcage on all 4 test subjects had been removed, while the heart, lungs, and diaphragm remained in place. The skin and most of the muscles attached to the ribs had been ripped off, exposing the lungs through the ribcage. All the blood vessels and organs remained intact. They had just been taken out and laid on the floor, fanning out around the eviscerated but still living bodies of the subjects. The digestive tract on all 4 could still be seen working, digesting food. It quickly became apparent that what they were digesting was their own flesh that they had ripped off and eaten over the course of days. Most of the soldiers were Russian special operatives at the facility, but still, after this, many of them refused to return to the chamber to remove the test subjects. They continued to scream and to be left in the chamber, and begged and demanded that the gas to be turned back on. To everyone's surprise, the test subjects put up a fierce fight in the process of being removed from the chamber. One of the Russian soldiers died from having his throat ripped out. Another was gravely injured by having his testicles ripped off, and an artery in his leg severed by one of the subject's teeth. Another 5 of the soldiers lost their lives, if you count the ones that committed suicide in the weeks following this incident. In the struggle, one of the 4 living subjects had his spleen ruptured, and he bled out almost immediately. The medical researchers attempted to sedate him, but this proved impossible. He was injected with more than 10 times the human dose of morphine, and still fought like a cornered animal, breaking the ribs and arm of one doctor. When his heart was seen to beat for full 2 minutes after he had bled out, to the point there was more air in his vascular system than blood. Even after it stopped, he continued to scream and flail for another 3 minutes, struggling to attack anyone in reach. And he just kept repeating, "More." Over and over weaker and weaker until he finally fell silent. The surviving 3 test subjects were heavily restrained and moved to a medical facility. The 2, with intact vocal cords, continuously begged for the gas to be turned back on. The most injured of the 3 was taken to the only surgical operating room that the facility had. In the process of preparing the subject to have his organs placed back within his body, it was found he was effectively immune to the sedative that they had given him to prepare him for the surgery. He fought furiously against the restraints. When the anesthetic gas was brought in to put him under, he managed to tear most of the way through a 4-inch wide leather strap on one wrist, even though the weight of a 200-pound soldier was holding him down. It took only a little more anesthetic than normal to put him under, and the instant his eyelids fluttered and closed, his heart stopped. In the autopsy of the test subject that died on the operating table, it was found that his blood had tripled the normal levels of oxygen. His muscles that were still attached to his skeleton were badly torn, and he had broken 9 bones in his struggle not to be subdued. Most of them were from the force from his own muscles had exerted on himself. The second survivor had been the first of the group of the 5 to start screaming. His vocal cords destroyed. He was unable to beg or object to surgery, and he only reacted by shaking his head violently in disapproval when the anesthetic gas was brought near him. He shook his head, yes, when someone suggested reluctantly they try the surgery without anesthetic, and did not react for the entire 6-hour procedure of replacing his abdominal organs and attempting to cover them with what remained of his skin. The surgeon presiding over the surgery stated that repeatedly that it should be medically impossible for the patient to still be alive. One terrified nurse assisting the surgery stated that she had seen the patient's mouth curl into a smile several times whenever their eyes met. When the surgery ended, the subject looked at the surgeon and began to wheeze loudly, attempting to talk while struggling. Assuming this must be something of drastic importance, the surgeon brought him a pen and a paper so the patient could write down his message. It was simple: keep cutting. The other subjects were given the same surgery, both without anesthetic as well, although they had to be injected with a paralytic for the duration of their operation. The surgeon found it impossible to perform the operation while the patients laughed continuously. Once paralyzed, the subjects could only follow the attending researchers with their eyes. The paralytic cleared their systems in an abnormally short period of time, and they were soon trying to escape their bonds. The moment they could speak, they were again asking for the gas. The researchers tried asking why they had injured themselves and why they had ripped out their own guts and why they wanted the gas so bad. Only one response was given: I must remain awake. All 3 subjects' restraints were reinforced and they were placed back into the chamber awaiting determination as to what should be done with them. The researchers, facing the wrath of their military benefactors for having failed the stated goals of their project, considered killing the surviving subjects. The commanding officer of ex-KGB instead saw potential and wanted to see what would happen if they were put back on the gas. The researchers strongly objected but were overruled. In preparation for being sealed in the chamber again, the subjects were connected to an EEG monitor and had their restraints padded for long-term confinement. To everyone's surprise, all 3 stopped struggling the moment it was let slip that they were going back on the gas. It was obvious that at this point all 3 were putting up a great struggle to stay awake. One of the subjects that could speak was humming loudly and continuously. The mute subject was straining his legs against the leather bonds with all his might, first left then right, then left again, for something to focus on. The remaining subject was holding his head off his pillow and blinking rapidly, having been the first to be wired for EEG. Most of the researchers were monitoring his brainwaves in surprise. They were normal most of the time, but sometimes flatlined, inexplicably. It looked as if he were repeatedly suffering brain death before returning to normal, As they focused on paper scrolling out of the brainwave monitor, only one nurse saw his eyelids slip shut at the same moment his head hit the pillow. His brainwaves immediately changed to that of deep sleep, then flatlined for the last time as his heart simultaneously stopped. The only remaining subject that could speak started screaming to be sealed in now. His brainwaves showed the same flat lines as one who had just died from falling asleep. The commander gave the order to seal the chamber with both subjects inside, as well as 3 researchers. One of the named 3 immediately drew his gun and shot the commander point blank between the eyes, then turned the gun on the mute subject and blew his brains out as well. He pointed the gun at the remaining subjects, still restrained to the bed, as the remaining members of the medical research team fled the room. "I won't be locked in here with these things. Not with him, not with you." He screamed at the man strapped to the table. "What are you?" he demanded. "I must know." The subject just smiled. Well, that's the end of the Russian sleep experiment. If you're wondering what happened to the soldier who shot his comrade, well, he killed himself. And the last test subject was put back into the chamber with the gas. Effectively, the gas was the only thing keeping him alive. So, what did you think of the story? Let me know in the comments. The longest anyone has ever gone without sleep was in 1963 for 11 days and 25 minutes. You can read about that on Google. Just a little fact for you. We all need sleep. It's nature's way of resetting the brain and our bodies. The scientists learned that the hard way. Well, I hope you liked this video. If you did, please disembowel the like button and subscribe to my channel and turn on all post notifications. If you like this video, give me a like, and if I get enough likes, I'll make a series out of it. So if you're into the paranormal, don't forget I also make ghost videos and creepypastas, and also I do the gaming walkthroughs too. So let me know in the comments if you liked the video, what was your favorite bit, and also let me know what topics, what stories I should include in the next videos. Till then guys, peace.
She makes me mad.